Welcome, I'm happy to see you again. Last time I talked about the enantiornithes, this time we will get to know the euorniths, the so-called good birds. This means only, that these birds are closer relative to the modern birds than the enantiornithes. But we shouldn't forget that the first euorniths still had teeth and clawed fingers. Not unlike the enantiornithes, the euorniths started with a couple of basal specimens. The first of them is Archaeorhynchus, a bird who lived in the north of China about 125 million years ago. He has a wingspan of 70 centimeters and paleontologists discovered gastroliths in his stomach. Gastroliths are swallowed stones to support the digestion by grinding food particles. They are used by many modern birds, but also by different dinosaur species. Such gastroliths are a hint to a vegetarian nutrition. The next species, called Jianchangornis, who lived in China about 120 million years ago, was a piscivore. He had small teeth in the mandible. Powerful legs are a hint that this bird was also a good walker. Zhongjiangornis is the first known bird without teeth in the beak and wing claws. He lived contemporary to the previous species in the same region and had the size of a pigeon. The structure of his feet allowed this bird to cling on branches. Probably Zhongjiangornis was able to lift up from ground. Shayangia was a small bird who lived contemporary to the other birds, but close to the Mongolian border. This small bird lived at the border of lakes and the nutrition may consist of fish and small crustacea. The name of the most birds origin from Chinese cities, like Zhongjiang, Chaoyang, Songling, Hongshan, and Jianchang, close to the assemblages where the bones was discovered. Thanks to volcanic activities, fossils was very well preserved, often with feathers. Schitzura lived in northeast China at the same time. The large leg feathers has vanished, but most remarkable detail of this basal euornithe is his excellent preserved forked tail with long feathers. The sister taxon of Schitzura are the Ornithuromorpha. This only means that the following birds are closer related to modern birds than the basal euorniths. The next branch split about 130 million years from the main path, but the known specimens lived much later and far away from China. Ptagopteryx lived in the south of Argentina about 80 million years ago and had the size of a chicken. The wing bones was reduced but the legs very prominent, so this bird was not able to fly, but an excellent runner. The nutrition may consist of fruits and small animals. The other species of this branch, Vorona, lived in Madagascar about 70 million years ago. There's not many known about this bird, and his relation to Ptagopteryx and other birds is not finally clear. Ambiartus, the next outgoing branch, lived in the forests of Mongolia about 120 million years ago and had the size of a crow. It's likely that he ate insects and other small animals. The next group, but this is not certain and disputed, are the Songlingornithidae. This group of birds lived in China about 125 till 112 million years ago. Songlingornis had small teeth and lived in the coast. His nutrition consists of small fishes. It's very probably that this bird was able to swim. Euxyanornis, another species of the group, shows very modern details in anatomy and feathers. These birds have been excellent flyers. The largest of them was Yanornis, who reached the size of a chicken. Maybe the Ongshanornithidae are older than the Songlingornithidae, both versions exist. They lived in the same time and in a close region to the Songlingornithes. Their anatomy reveals that they lived at the coast like modern Wat birds, even they are very small for such a way of life. Longicrusavis had a long, feathered tail, and Archaeornithura had no more feathers on the lower leg. The conserved feathers reveal that these birds had excellent flying abilities. In the beak of Ongshanornis small holes for teeth was found, but teeth themselves was never discovered. It's not clear if these birds had toothless beaks. The next species, Apsa ravis, lived in Mongolia. Even the group split about 129 million years ago, the species lived 50 million years later. Apsa ravis shows a modern structure of wing musculature. In opposition to the previous birds, Apsa ravis was not marine. Better known is the next branch, Gansus. This bird lived about 120 million years ago in the province Gansu in central China. Gansus has a big similarity to modern ducks, the feet had floating skin. The behavior was the same as that of modern sea birds. But there's no relationship between Gansus and them. Hollanda from Mongolia is the next branch that split about 124 million years ago. The species itself lived about 75 million years ago. He had the size of a chicken and very powerful legs. Researchers believe he was a running bird and hunted little reptiles and insects. The sister taxon of Hollanda are the Ornithura, the true birds. However, this means only that we come closer to the modern birds. But since the crocodiles, no group survived till today, and the next three groups disappeared too. The first branch of the Ornithura is Ichthyornis, the fish bird. He had the size of a pigeon and an advanced thorax. Most parts of this bird seem to be modern, except of the small and sharp teeth in the beak. Ichthyornis looks like a modern gull, and it's likely that he had a similar behavior. The nutrition was composited of fish and crustacea. The branch of Ichthyornis split about 123 million years ago, but the bird itself lived between 95 and 83 million years. Ichthyornis was discovered in North America. The next branch is a group of very specialized birds, the Hesperorniths. The group split about 122 million years ago from the Ornithura, but the fossil documentation reaches from 100 till 66 million years, the end of the Cretaceous. Hesperorniths was a global phenomenon, and fossils was found in the whole northern hemisphere. They reached sizes from 1 to 1.8 meter. The wings are strongly reduced, the feet had floating skins and was attached sideward. Like the earlier birds, they had teethed beaks. The body of the Hesperorniths looks like a penguin. This bird lived mostly in water, was an excellent diver. The short and sideward allocated legs allowed not an elegant walk on land. Researchers believe they slipped over land, not unlike modern penguins. The nutrition consists of fish and crustacea, once more an analogy to modern penguins. Nonetheless, there's no deeper relationship between both groups. Hesperorniths vanished at the final Cretaceous, penguins emerged much later. But however, the Hesperorniths was a very successful group with 10 known species over a time of 40 million years, from Analiornis till the widespread Hesperornis and his little brother Canadaga at the end of the Mesozoic. And we shouldn't not forget they shared the habitat with real sea monsters. The next bird, the last of the actual part, is the closest relative to the modern birds. The branch of Ornithura split about 121 million years ago into the Limenavis branch and the Aves, the birds. Limenavis himself lived 50 million years later in Argentina. The fossil residues are very poor, but it's enough to recognize that this bird lived at coasts. The sister taxon are the Aves, the modern birds. There exist not many fossil traces of them in the Cretaceous, but the molecular clock places the last common ancestor of all living birds in the time of 120 million years. The molecular clock is reconstructing the genetic shift and mutation over time, to recreate the family tree of living organisms. Additionally, the molecular clock is calibrated with fossils to enlarge the precision. But how looked the LCA? Most likely he was small and lived close to the water. But all this is speculation. More about the modern birds is coming in the next part. But now I want to talk about the concurrent of the birds. The air was not a virgin space, and since the late Triassic the Pterosaurs was the dominating flying vertebrates. So how was the relation between birds and pterosaurs? Was it a war, or a peaceful coexistence? Let's have first a look on the evolution of pterosaurs. The first wave of them was the basal or long-tailed pterosaurs. They dominated from Triassic till the end of the Middle Jurassic. About 165 million years ago, the diversity of pterosaurs exploded, and the progressive short-tailed pterosaurs came up. For the next 15 million years the relation between both pterosaur groups was balanced, then the short-tailed pterosaurs overthrown the basal relatives. This happened in the time of Archaeopteryx. Has this a context or is it chance? Till 130 million years ago the diversity of pterosaurs decreased, followed by a second explosion. But we see that this radiation affects only the short-tailed pterosaurs. From the maximum 125 million years ago came, with breaks, the decline of the pterosaurs lasted till 85 million years. The last wave was only affected by the large short-tailed pterosaurs. These group evolved the largest flying creatures ever. The trend of increasing size is clear, the largest and the median size increase over time. The size of the smallest pterosaurs was indifferent. Over the time the proportion of the pterosaurs with small wingspans till a meter decrease, and at the end of the Cretaceous the smallest pterosaur had a wingspan of 2 meters. The decline of the small pterosaurs corresponds with the rise of the birds. Was it this? The birds overtake the role of the small flying vertebrates, the pterosaurs dominated in the league of the huge flyers. A direct comparison shows that the context is more complex. The rise of the birds and the pterosaurs 130 million years ago was synchronous, the birds overtake the leadership. But later, after the decline of the first wave of enantiornithes and euorniths, the pterosaurs overtook leadership again. The birds overtake leadership about 105 million years ago, and after the meteorite impact at the final Cretaceous they are the only surviving flying vertebrates. But at this time, 66 million years ago, the groups had an age of 55 million years, nearly the half-time of their existence. And to my unpleasure we have a massive hiatus in this long time. I hope you are still awake. Goodbye, your Archibald Froggy Frog.